You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, the podcast for marketing professionals in higher education. Join us every week as we talk to the industry's greatest minds in student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where marketing in higher ed is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. I'm Troy Singer, here with my good friend and co-host, Bart Kaler. Today, we speak to Dr. Steve Lennox. He's the president of Kingswood University, and he's going to introduce us to an innovative initiative that they're doing that is getting creating a lot of opportunity for them.
Yeah, it's called Kingswood Learn, and it's something that I've been kind of following for a while, and Dr. Lennox and I have known each other for years, and so I'm very excited about what they're doing. It's providing some content that's actually free for users, that they can actually take some classes, more like a Coursera model, but then they also are building up opportunities to build enrollment through this initiative as well. So very exciting to hear about that, and I'm also excited just that this episode is going to be sponsored by NextGrad. NextGrad is North America's largest higher education advertising network. It's one that I often recommend to a lot of my clients and my friends. The NextGrad network generates millions of impressions every month in over 1,100 high schools in 82 media markets across the United States and Canada. What makes NextGrad unique is its network of digital kiosks located in high traffic locations inside the high school buildings themselves. Students view helpful educational content and ads from colleges, universities, trade schools, military recruiters, and even public health advertisers. NextGrad literally helps high school students decide what's next. The NextGrad network is disrupting the old-fashioned college bulletin board, and they're redefining how students learn about higher education. So if you're interested in reaching high school students on their own turf, when and where they're making those critical decisions about their educational future, then NextGrad is for you. To learn more, call my friends at NextGrad or visit nextgrad.com, nextgrad.com, email info@nextgrad.com, or call them at 801-336-5220 and leave a message. That's 801-336-5220, or visit nextgrad.com. NextGrad is the High School Opportunity Network. So with that, I'm so excited about that. I'd love to jump right in with Stephen now. So Troy, so could you take us there?
Absolutely. Here is our conversation with Dr. Steve Lennox. Steve, to start us off, we always ask our guests to share something that they've recently learned that might be fun or interesting for our listeners. So, Steve, what's something that has caught your attention recently?
Well, this is going to seem a little strange, but it's on prayer. And I know that's the super spiritual answer to give. But for somebody who's been a follower of Jesus for over 60 years, it's kind of embarrassing to say that I'm just now learning lessons about this important aspect of Christian faith. And I do think it has something to do with being a college president. You're thrown back on your faith system inevitably because of the challenges.
That's great. That's a great answer. I love that. Yeah. Thrown back on your knees, I suppose, what that would be. So
Exactly. There's a whole podcast just on that.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, I'll look for it because I think we take that for granted. We just know how to. And as you describe it, I think there's some deeper thoughts and instructions around it that we can benefit from. So I look forward to looking deeper into it. But for now, would love to learn and have you introduce us to Kingswood. So you are in your 10th year as president at Kingswood University, and many of our listeners might not be familiar with the incredible legacy of Kingswood. So if you would, could you share a little bit about the university and unique place it has in higher ed?
Sure, I will be happy to. We've been around for almost 80 years. We are what is known as a Bible college. And only about 15 years ago did we shed that from our name and became Kingswood University. Before that, we were Bethany Bible College. Mm-hmm. We're located in the Maritimes of Canada, a place that not too many folks in the States might be familiar with, but it is a beautiful place. And the Bible colleges are known for their focus on preparing people for vocational ministry. That's starting to change, where people understand that you can serve God as a vocation, as a pastor, but also through your vocation, whatever that might be. And so we've tried to make that shift as well. Kingswood has long been known for producing leaders for the church who are committed to serve others. I mean, I know that's kind of boilerplate, but it does seem to characterize those that Kingswood has prepared. They're people who are willing to kind of do whatever needs to be done. So that's a part of our legacy we're really proud of and don't want to see changed.
That's great. And let me just kind of tease out a little bit, because I know that, you and I have known each other for about 10 years. And so, in full disclosure for everyone, Steve and I know each other. We've done some work together. But I want to think a little bit about, in these, there's challenging times right now in higher education. And I think that one thing that I've noticed that Kingswood has done, and that under your leadership, is you've taken a very bold move that's kind of making some waves in some of the circles as it relates to, online learning. So tell us a little bit about this new learning platform called Kingswood Learn. What is that, and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Kingswood Learn is a two-sided platform offering micro courses. These are high-quality micro courses. We've seeded the platform with about 50 of them, but because it's two-sided, we invite other practitioners to supply courses, micro courses. These take anywhere from 4 to 7 hours to complete. And as I said, they're free. They don't bring academic credit, but they do bring discipleship resources to bear in the church and also leadership development. One of the other features about this is that while the courses are free, we all offer an option to assess the work of these learners. It'll cost about the price of a hardback book. But what that does is allow for this material to be assessed. There's feedback given, and these courses then become little Lego pieces, so that a person can take one of these micro courses simply to upskill in an area of interest. But if for whatever reason they feel like they want to go on, perhaps to pursue a degree or perhaps to some kind of credentialing, these courses then become of value to them. They become stackable. And we've designed that into all of our learning, both on campus and online, certificate level, and then these micro courses, so that they all fit together somehow, so a person, wherever they start, can get where they need to go. So the Kingswood Learn is designed for the person in the local church or in a Christian organization that wants to upskill in the areas of discipleship or leadership development, and for those who are in those areas that want to build into their people and offer it to others for free.
That's great. So unpack that a little bit for me, because some people are hearing that might be like, okay, that's an interesting move to grow as an institution by giving away something free. So help people understand that, because it's a pretty bold move, and I applaud it. But how does that work, at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, what happened was, Bart, we were offering, of course, our undergraduate and our graduate courses for probably 73 or 4 years, and then saw the need to actually start moving this stuff online. So we began to do that. We also began to offer certificate level courses, so micro credentials online. But as I would go out and I would interact with local churches particularly, there was such a hunger there for discipleship resources. And I remember thinking, I've got a whole university filled with resources that these people need. But the threshold is too high. It's either a cost threshold or a convenience threshold, but it's too high for them. So I've got this vast warehouse of material that these people would be hungry for, but there's no real way to give it to them in a way that they would be willing to take it. And I remember thinking exactly what you said. If only I could give this away for free, but I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't want to lose my job over it. But it continued to be really a burden for me to try to strengthen the local church, because that's in our mission statement. We're committed to strengthening the local church. Well, along came a relationship that had actually began probably 30 some years earlier, with a very entrepreneurial leader, CEO of Campus EDU. And because we already had this long-standing relationship of deep trust, he proposed to me an idea that had I not had that relationship, I would have rejected it out of hand. But because it met this need of giving away this material in a way that people could really use it, would really access it, and doing it in a way that had a business sense to it, and also was one totally built on this trust relationship. It wouldn't have happened had it not been for that. It was just the right formula to get this Kingswood Learn off the drawing board and onto people's computers and devices and into churches and all other kinds of places right now.
That's great. And you alluded to it earlier about the high quality of it. And that's one thing I can attest to. I know Campus EDU. I know Darren. I know what you do and how you adhere to that as well, the excellence and the quality. I've signed up for a class. I've taken part of that, and I can attest that these are really high quality, high production values. I mean, these are not just talking heads in front of a camera, a webcam. I mean, tell us a little bit about that, because I mean, this is like Netflix level type of things.
Yeah, we felt like we wanted to seed the platform with as high a quality as possible, but not to set the bar so high that the other side of the platform can't produce material. Sure. We don't want people to be expending high amounts of money to create these courses. We want a level of quality, certainly a level of integrity in terms of content, but the quality needs to be high enough, and that gives people an opportunity to engage and remain engaged. Talking heads aren't going to keep people's attention, but the packaging of this material is really, I think it's genius. It's short videos, 5 to 10 minute videos. There's 5 units, and after each video there are learning activities, things to read, things to reflect on. So it does more than just give content through the screen. And that's the material that would be then assessed. But it's not just that the material is high quality, but it's packaged in such a way that it's consumable. People start it and finish it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of it. I think that's just the nature of today's audience. And I think that everybody wants micro credentials. I mean, that's in the marketplace. But I think being able to package it in a way that people want to consume the way that they're used to consuming short form video, I think is a really brilliant way to go.
Yeah. And the credit for this goes to Darren.
Yeah.
I'm a theologian. I don't know anything about this stuff. I know the content to communicate it, but the way that it needs to be communicated, the way that it needs to be consumed, this was what Darren brought to the table, plus the business savvy to say that, yes, these courses are something you'll give away for free, but there's definitely benefit to be gained by Kingswood so that it makes good business sense as well as make good mission sense.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Steve, launching a new program, let alone a new platform, comes with challenges. So could you share some of the obstacles that you and the Kingswood team encountered in developing Kingswood Learn?
That's a great question, Troy, because if you had said, would this kind of thing work, I would have said, not a chance. It's just too, it's too out of the box. For one thing, we're a small institution. So the resources that were necessary to pull this off, that would have been an insurmountable obstacle. It's not typical for a higher ed institution to take this kind of step so close to the local church. So it's one thing to say micro-credential for a person who's upskilling and wants a new job or wants licensure or wants to be ordained in a church. That's a logical next step. But what we're doing is going one step, I'll say beneath that, although I don't mean in a lower sense, but closer to the church pew, to a group of people that would ordinarily be overlooked by higher education, bypassed by them. We train the trainers of these people. So not only was this a strange way of thinking about doing education for us, but it was a different group than a higher education institution would normally be thinking about. And if I get a chance, I want to come back and talk about why that really is intentional. But definitely that was a challenge. And I would say again, we were in a situation where we felt like we had resources that we wanted to invest in something that the church really needed. And so that was really where it began. I have an incredible group of leaders on campus, an incredible team, very innovative. Our trustees are 100% on board with this. And we're almost from the beginning, it was almost like they were pushing this idea with us. So we didn't have any obstacles when it came to trustee approval or constituent approval. It's almost like when you have the right idea, you don't have to spend a lot of time convincing people. It's almost like they intuit that this is the right idea. This is what the church needs. And the fact that this is being done by a group that might not ordinarily be the first person to do it or the first group to do it, that didn't seem to be a problem for people. Like universally what I've heard is, wow, this is exactly what we need. So I think that really helped for our trustees, for our constituency, and for the close to 1,300 learners we have in less than a year.
I think that's really a testament to how that works, because that was going to be my next question is, well, how did you, I mean, something as distinctive and bold and in some ways kind of like a bit of a risk. I mean, it's managed risk, but something that's outside of the box. My question was going to be, well, how did you convince everyone? How did you help everybody understand? But I think that that's sometimes what really bold and distinctive ideas are, is that people just intuit the fact that, oh, I get this. Yes, that we have to do this. And so it sounds to me like that's a little bit about what happened there at Kingswood. Yeah.
I would say that's true, Bart. And it flows directly from our mission. I know this is a real passion of yours, to stay on mission. And how do you stay on mission? And it's almost like it's become cliched. But what I have seen is that one of the very first things that we were led to do was to go to our mission statement and modify our mission statement, and it becomes something that we recite before we go to AdCab meetings, that we recite at board meetings. I pay my students a toonie. In Canada, that's a $2 coin. I'll pay them a toonie if they'll recite the mission statement to me. We've just elevated it. But in that mission statement, it says that we exist to serve Jesus Christ by strengthening the local and global church. And so when we wrote it, we didn't realize how important that phrase was going to be to us. But it has become really the mandate for what we do. And so because we've elevated that, to say to a board or a donor, this is serving the church. This is strengthening the church. It doesn't take any convincing. They know that it will do that, and we're on mission, but our mission is going beyond where higher education ordinarily goes.
Yeah, before we get to the next question, Troy, I wanted to kind of swing back around, because you talked a little bit about, strengthening the local and the global church. You also spoke of some intentionality of that level that you hit within the church. So unpack that for me.
Yeah, I think that this is an important moment for higher education to recognize that they exist to serve society, some aspect of society. So different colleges and universities will serve different components, different strata, different levels, different groups in society. Because we're a Bible college, it's clear that we serve the church. And so you begin to ask questions, not how I can educate people, but how through education I can strengthen the church. And I think this is the moment for higher education to be asking the real question of purpose. Let's not waste this crisis that we have. Let's go back to really what is our purpose as educational institutions. And when you do that, in our case, we said it is to credential people. It is to provide an education for people. It is also to help people reach a level of credentialing in the licensing and the ordination. That's something that Bible colleges have done. But also, the church at this moment in time is very much in need of leadership development tools, discipleship tools that will allow it to continue to serve effectively in the ways that the ways that they're given. And so that now becomes part of our job too. We don't just stop at the level of micro-credentials. We go to wherever our audience has a need. Our mission is education. How can we bring it to them in a way that they need it?
I love that. I think that can apply to anyone. Like you said, any school can look at your mission and look to see how that works. I mean, I know some of the big land grant institutions, they are focusing on that part of their mission to deliver the types of things that they do. But I love that in the context of Kingswood, in the context of Kingswood Learn, in the context of the church, how critical it is for that to be a part of what you're doing in educating. I've got a sticker on my water bottle that says theology matters. And I think that sometimes that's lost in the conversations that we have within the context of the church, that I think it's something like Kingswood Learn is really hitting, head on, is dealing with things like that. So yeah. I love that. Yeah. Troy?
Would like to know, with fresh energy behind Kingswood Learn, what opportunities has it created with marketing and with enrollment efforts?
That's a great question, Troy. When we started out, we thought there would be some halo effect to Kingswood Learn. We had no idea. This has recast Kingswood. Of all the things that we've done, this has been the most effective at recasting Kingswood in the persona that we're seeking, which is we exist to serve the church. How can we serve you? And nothing has said that more clearly than this willingness to invest $2 million essentially into the church without asking anything back from it. So it totally changes the conversation, whether we're talking about Kingswood Learn or not. The fact that we are the institution that has launched Kingswood Learn immediately changes people's perception of us. It's too soon, or it has been too soon. I would love to say, we've generated another 50 seats on our on-campus programs from this. That hasn't happened yet. But it has done a significant job at changing people's perceptions of us, both in the church, outside the Wesleyan Church, our sponsoring denomination. And it's created all kinds of opportunities for new conversations with new donors, new constituencies, new potential partners, which would have been totally closed off to us otherwise. And so the halo effect has been even more than we've imagined, and I think we're just beginning to see the potential for some of the partnerships which could yield those 50 new on-campus students or online students. And of course, we want to see that. But we are just delighted at both the impact this is having on the church, but also the impact this is having on Kingswood in the eyes of the church.
That's great. And I want to unpack a little bit about that potential partnerships, because I know that part of what you said earlier, and if I may use the word crowdsourced, I mean, the idea that you've got the second level of where other people can come and put content on that. Unpack that a little bit, because I'm fascinated with that. And I think it's a little bit of a different approach that some schools, especially schools that are like very cautious of the kind of content that they might be representing, or not necessarily content, but the fact that they don't have full control over the content could cause some challenges. So let's unpack that for me.
Yeah. This is partly philosophy, partly theology. Mm-hmm. The theological perspective that we represent in the Wesleyan tradition has been much more about finding partners, building bridges. We have a core of truth that we believe strongly, and then we recognize that where there are matters of conscience and opinion, and even in some areas of doctrine, then we live and let live. So it partly comes out of our sense of we're not here to tell everybody exactly the way it needs to be.
Right.
Doesn't mean we don't have strong beliefs. We do, but we recognize that doesn't preclude us from finding partners with people who perhaps believe differently on some theological points. All of it in the realm of, I would say, evangelical Christianity.
Sure.
There are limits here, but our goal is not defining narrowly what those limits are, but allowing this to function in ways that are true to us in terms of our theological perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophically, I think people are going to get information, and they're going to get it from wherever they can. And I feel like it's better for me to find a partnership with someone with whom I share 90%, 85% of our theological beliefs. It's better for me to partner with that person and to present a strong option to people than it is to just have them go onto the internet and get whatever from whoever. So there's kind of philosophical move here. But what we started with was the recognition that there are lots of practitioners out there, pastors, teachers, district superintendents, people in the marketplace who have incredible content that they want to share, that they should share. Because of the publishing industry being so disrupted, the options for them, they can self-publish, but I take it from me, that audience is limited. So what we're doing is we're providing people who have something to share a way that they can prepare and share it into an audience that would be way wider than the people that would hear it otherwise. And we knew that there are people out there, and sure enough, there are people who have great content, some of it already prepared. Some of what we're doing is taking content that's already been produced, and we're just repackaging it in the micro course format. So we've got a district superintendent, a regional superintendent who has tons of stuff, really good stuff. And now he is giving us the opportunity to put it in micro courses, and that will mean that all of his people in his district and region will have access to this, and then a bunch of other people beside. We've got a denomination that we're talking to. We've got other organizations of vocational ministers that we're talking to. And we wouldn't be able to have these conversations had we not had this platform that we could invite them to.
That's great. I love that. And I guess before we kind of wrap things up, I just got a follow-up question too on this, in the sense that if there are other leaders that are listening to this and they're considering a bold or distinctive or innovative direction, especially as it comes to digital, because I know there's going to be a lot of opportunities with generative AI, with other things going on. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you would tell them, that as they move toward these digital solutions, what advice would you give them in the way that they kind of approach this and look at it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say start with your mission. If this is not flowing naturally out of your mission, people will sniff out desperation. And so I think that by showing them that this is actually an effective way of expressing who we truly are and what we truly exist to do, then I think that's a great start. For us, it's been largely about opportunities. There's a book called Opportunity Leadership, and it has been so strategic for me to give voice to this idea that these ideas come. My perspective is these ideas come from God. And so if I think back over the last 10 years at Kingswood, most of the really exciting things that have happened because opportunities were presented to us. And the leadership was there to say, this is a good opportunity. And so I would suspect that these people that you're talking about, there are probably opportunities that are presenting themselves. And not all of those opportunities will be good, but some of them will be golden. And then the other thing that I think helped to distinguish good opportunities from less than good opportunities were the relationships that were established. So, I think back to 30 years ago when I met Darren. He was my kids' youth. Actually, he was a student at the university where I was working, and then he became my kids' youth pastor, and always somebody that I knew and respected and trusted and admired. And maybe the relationship won't go back 30 years, but because it was built on a strong trust relationship, we could go far fast. I think of another relationship that I have with another opportunity that presented itself, and it was all about starting with person to person, just getting to know someone so that when the opportunity came, I didn't have to wonder if I could trust this person nor could they trust me. Right. The channels were already established. And so I suspect that for institutions who are thinking along these lines, You can go spend a lot of money and find a partner and take your chances, or you can build out of these opportunities and these relationships that you've already been working hard to establish in a way that's consistent with one's mission.
I love that. I love that because I think that's a conversation, Troy, you and I have had many times, is the idea of how important it is for relationship building and trust building. And as we network, as we grow, I mean, Troy and I were at a conference this week, and most of what I go to these conferences for is to build relationships, to build trust, because at the end of the day, God's going to take care of my needs as my business and other things like that. And it's going to be through those relationships and that trust that we can build.
True.
So
Yes.
I really appreciate that reminder, Steve.
Steve, as we wrap up our conversation for today, is there one piece of advice or maybe an insight that you could leave our listeners with, particularly something that could encourage or help out our audience and could enable them to move the needle right away?
Yeah, great question. I think I'll go back to something that I said earlier and perhaps put a little bit more flesh and bones on it. This is a really difficult moment for those of us in higher education. We are a disrupted industry, and it isn't getting any easier. And there can be moments in a job like this where you say, is it really worth it? I mean, the pieces keep moving, the rules keep changing. This is really hard. And I think one thing that should encourage every educator, and that is to know that education will always be necessary. But the forms in which that education is provided, the modalities in which it's delivered, will always be changing. The history of education is a history of a consistent need met in a variety of ways. And so what we're seeing here is not really a challenge to the return on investment for education. It's a challenge to the return on investment for a model of delivering higher education that has been around for, 100, 200 years. Well, these things change. So what we have is a commodity, if I can commodify it, that is still an essential of life. Our challenge is to figure out how to meet the need for education in the new means. And I think if we're educators, then we're educated. We ought to be able to figure this out. But it's not a moment for despair. It's a moment for creativity. It's a moment for partnerships. It's a moment for risk-taking. What we're trying to do is help people to get something they know they need, and we have to give them. And so we need to be creative about doing that.
That's great. I love that, Steve. Appreciate that last comment. And one question I have is if somebody wanted to follow up with you after this and had some questions about Kingswood Learn or were inspired with something you said and just wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way?
Well, I think if they want to learn more about Kingswood Learn, kingswoodlearn.com, www.kingswoodlearn.com. If there'd be a way to share that with your listeners, that would be wonderful. To get in touch with me, president@kingswood.edu or Lennox s@kingswood.edu. Either way, I'd be happy to hear from any of your listeners and happy to continue the conversation.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lennox, for that wonderful intro and overview of Kingswood University and Kingswood Learn. Bart, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to convey before we close out this episode?
Yeah, I really appreciated what Steve talked about, especially as it focuses on mission. I mean, I love the fact that he said sometimes that word gets thrown around. It almost gets to be kind of a cliche, but I think it's so crucial that we have to go back and really understand, why are we doing what we're doing every day? We're not doing it to hit the bottom line, because to hit the bottom line is to hit our mission and to do the mission that we need to do. And I've seen far too many schools have what I call mission drift, where the bottom line sometimes gets in front of the mission, and you have more problems then that's harder to dig out of than actually staying on mission. And so the fact that really Kingswood Learn came out of the mission, and I think that that's going to serve Kingswood very well on that. And I think it's just a matter of time that bold investment is going to start paying off for those undergrad numbers and some of the other things that we talked about. But so I'm really encouraged by just staying on missions and understanding your mission first, I think is critical too, and everybody kind of staying on that. And that's a big part of what I talked about in my book. So it just inspired me today, Steve, to have you on the show, and I'm glad that you were. So thanks again, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much.
The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is powered by Kaler Solutions, your go-to partner for higher ed mission fit marketing strategies, enrollment, and branding needs, and sponsored by Ring Digital, your ad targeting people. With our powerful technology, we ensure your message connects with the right audience to maximize impact. On behalf of our guest, Dr. Steve Lennox, Bart Kaler, and myself, Troy Singer, thank you for joining us.